The kitchen skill that scares most people is using a knife, right? Like chopping an onion. Based on a survey I did a while back, 70% to 80% of all home cooks have never sharpened their kitchen knives, ever, which is kind of frightening. So people have these big, heavy European German knives, and they're dull, which is going to bounce off the smooth top layer of anything you're cutting, which makes them extremely dangerous. A sharp knife is going to grab hold into the vegetable or fruit and hold its place there and is not going to move around. Obviously, there are knife skills that are helpful, like bringing your hands in so you don't have your fingers sitting on the onion. The prep is 90% of cooking, right? And people think they have to dice an onion, brunoise or whatever. If you were training in a French restaurant, you have to get it exactly right, quarter inch, half inch. For most recipes, it just doesn't matter. Just chop the bloody onion any way you want. Big pieces, small pieces, nobody cares. What's really important is using a smaller knife. We tend to use Japanese style knives here. They're smaller, they're lighter, they're easier to handle. And that big 10-inch or 8-inch, 10-ounce chef's knife is really too much knife for most people. It's like, do you want to drive a Ferrari? Well, if you're not a race car driver, Subaru is probably a better choice. It'll get you there safer. If you want to make a recipe your own, first thing is know the recipe so well you don't have to follow a recipe, right? Second thing I would do is play with flavors rather than technique. In fact, the best way is really at the end of cooking. Chefs do this every day. You're about to serve a soup or a stew or a braise or whatever you're doing. You taste it, right? You adjust the salt level. Almost everybody undersalts their food at home. That's why restaurant food tastes good, because they salt it. You might want to add something slightly sweet, something sour, a little vinegar. You might want to add some ginger to it at the end, or garlic, or chopped scallions, or pomegranate molasses. You can adjust a recipe and take it from bad to good or good to great in the last 2 minutes. And that last 2 minutes is the most important 2 minutes of every recipe, other than reading the recipe before you start it. So if you want to make it your own, that's where I would start, is adjusting flavors at the end, adding a little bit of something. But when it comes to like baking, you don't want to add honey instead of sugar, because sugar is hygroscopic and it bakes differently. So I would say changing flavors and having a pantry where you have 10 or 15, you have fermented sauces, you have chilies, you have spices. Those are the things you can use easily to alter a recipe to make it your own without fundamentally changing the nature of the recipe.